Amen. All right. So let's go ahead and get into the book of Zechariah. Now, a couple of things that you need to know about. First of all, Zechariah is the next to the last book of the Old Testament. So we are getting close, but we're not as close as you think. And here's why. Because while Haggai is only a couple chapters long, and Nahum 3 chapters long, we've been going through some short books. Zechariah is the longest book of the minor prophets. Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel are all longer, but Zechariah is 14 chapters long, and it has 1,000 words more than the next largest book of the minor prophets. Consequently, we're going to spend some time in Zechariah, and here's the real thing. You know how Jesus has the parables? You can oftentimes go through the Gospels and just preach through the parables, and you're going to have like 30 sermons out of there. Well, Zechariah has visions, and we're going to see right from the get-go, after verse 6 in chapter 1, he's going to have 8 visions. Some would say 10. We're going to focus on the number 8. 8 visions. They're significant visions, and God included them in Holy Scripture. So I want to take time and look at each one of those. So tonight we're going to have the introduction to Zechariah. Then on Wednesday, next time we meet, Skip, of course, will be here in between. I'm going to look at verses 1 through 6, and we're going to kind of look at this phrase, return to me. That's the theme of Zechariah chapter 1. But then we're going to get into these visions, and included in those visions is chapter 3, one of my, I say this a lot, one of my favorite chapters in all of Scripture, because chapter 3 contains this incredible vision of the righteousness of God. And we're going to spend some time on each one of these visions and take a look at what they have to teach. But for tonight, let's just talk about who Zechariah is, when he prophesied, and a little bit more about him. So Zechariah is a contemporary of Haggai. Haggai, you remember, was the easiest book of the Old Testament to date. He gives the dates and times of when he started in reference to the kings and places and stuff. And so we easily date his book beginning in the year 520 BC. Zechariah, right up there with Haggai as far as dating. He's going to tell us the specific date. He started in about the month of October or November in 520 BC, just 2 months after Haggai. So they were parallel prophets. So just a rundown on the history leading up to this, okay? In 605 BC, the nation is deported to Babylon. The first deportation starts. The second one in 597, and then in 586, the temple and the city of Jerusalem are destroyed by the Babylonians, and that's when Daniel is taken captive back to Babylon. In 539 BC, this is 19 years before Zechariah is written, Babylon falls to Persia. The Medo-Persian Empire picks up where the Babylonian Empire left off. In 538 BC, that's 18 years before Haggai and Zechariah were written, Cyrus permits the Jews to return to their land. So in 536, they lay the foundation for the temple, but because of opposition and discouragement, they stop. Haggai comes and encourages them to continue the building. That's what he does. So Zechariah starts 2 months later, and he brings in his visions. And you're going to see this this very cohesive relationship between Haggai and Zechariah. They don't really, most of it is inferred by what they wrote and what they did and said, but they are two completely different prophets of God because they have two completely different purposes, two completely different missions. The mission of Haggai is to get to work building the temple. He's the instigator, the one that is going to call the men to action and say, how can you live in your paneled houses when the house of God lies in ruins? Get off your butts and get to work. That's the message of Haggai. And he does. Haggai is the builder, the construction worker, the guy who gets things done. He's the doer. Zechariah is the dreamer. He's the visionary. And it's interesting because if you just have practical doers and no visionaries, you create a specific type of a nation or a people. It's not good. It's dry. It's callous. It's task oriented. Likewise, if all you have are dreamers, nothing is going to get done. You need the doers and you need the visionaries. This is God's design. He doesn't make us all the same way, but he puts on our hearts what we are gifted to do. Haggai was the builder. Zechariah is the visionary, the dreamer, and they complement each other in their ministries as prophets in the nation. So I want you to imagine what it was like for the people to return from Babylon. Zechariah is young, okay? In chapter 2, verse 4, a vision comes to him and addresses him as young man. So he was probably in his 20s. There's no age that's given, but that's likely his age in the 20s when he received his first vision. Haggai was older than that. So we've got a young and an old going here too. But although Zechariah had never seen the streets of Jerusalem and the Temple of Solomon, some of those with him there did. They remembered the glory of Solomon's temple and the city streets of Jerusalem, and it was all gone. It was all laying in ruins. So when they got back, there was this disappointment, the sadness of seeing what had been destroyed and what they were facing. There was discouragement. The work had stalled, and Haggai comes and challenges their hands, and Zechariah comes and lifts up their hearts. That's the role that he had, was to encourage them. Now, his name, interesting, a really interesting thing occurs with the name of Zechariah. It means God remembers. Now, there's a Zechariah in the Old Testament. It was a popular name. I think there's like 30 different Zechariahs in the Old Testament at some place or another. But we're given his genealogy here, so we know who he is. But there's also a Zacharias in the New Testament. Same name. One is a Greek version and one is the Aramaic version. Both names mean God remembers. Now, we know that Zechariah was not just a prophet, he also was a priest. We know this because in the book of Nehemiah, chapter 12, we read this. Now these are the priests and the Levites who came up with Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, and Jeshua, Sariah, Jeremiah, Ezra, Amariah, Maluk, Hattush, Shechaniah, Rehum, Meremoth, Iddo, Maadiah, Bilgah, Iddo, Genathoi, and Abijah. That's in verse 5 of chapter 12 in Nehemiah. There's three names in that verse: Iddo, Genathoi, and Abijah. Now, go to Zechariah chapter 1. In the 8th month of the 2nd year of Darius, the word of the Lord came to Zechariah the prophet, the son of Berechiah, the son of Iddo, saying, The Lord was very angry with your fathers. So Iddo is the grandfather of Zechariah. And in Nehemiah chapter 12, verse 16, it identifies in the days of Jehoiakim, the priests of the heads of the fathers' households were, and in verse 16 of Iddo, Zechariah of Ginnethon and Meshullam. And then of Abijah, Zikri of Miniamim and Modiah Piltai. So anyhow, Iddo and Abijah. Now, turn to the book of Luke, if you can, chapter 1, Luke chapter 1, and I want to read something to you. Zechariah in the Old Testament, his name means God remembers, and his father's name, Berechiah, means that God blesses, and Iddo means at the appointed time. And Iddo, Berechiah, and Zechariah, their three names are telling us that at the appointed time, God will remember and bless his people. Those three names are in a little cluster there to tell us that God will remember to bless his people at the appointed time. Okay? Now, in Luke chapter 1, beginning in verse 4, in the days of Herod, the king of Judea, there was a priest named Zacharias of the division of Abijah. You see the close connection here? At the end of the Old Testament, in the book of Zechariah, as God is bringing the Old Testament to a close, we still have Malachi to come, but we have this, the closing of the Old Testament with a priest and a prophet who is named Zechariah. God remembers. And then the New Testament opens. Now, Luke is not the first book of the New Testament, but this scene is the first New Testament scene. Chronologically, the angel appearing to the father of John the Baptist is the first thing that we see in the New Testament era, and it's to a guy named Zacharias of the family of Abijah. Iddo and Abijah are back-to-back names in the book of Nehemiah. And here we have Zechariah, God remembers in the Old Testament, and Zacharias, God remembers in the New Testament. So God closes out the Old Testament with a prophet named Zechariah. At the appointed time, God will remember to bless his people, and opens up the New Testament with an angel in the Holy of Holies appearing to Zacharias, God remembers, and his wife Elizabeth, whose name means the oath of my God. So I think that's a really interesting bookend story to this, what we call the intertestamental period between the two testaments. At the book of Malachi, God was silent for 400 years. And his last words were to Zechariah and Malachi. And then at the very beginning of the New Testament, his first words are to a priest by the name of Zacharias, that he will bear a son, and he names that son John. That John becomes John the Baptist. So a very interesting gospel connection there between the two. All right, so Zechariah was both a priest and a prophet. This is not common. It's not unheard of, but it's not common. Usually the priests have a certain function and the prophets have a different function. But every once in a while you get somebody like Samuel, who was the high priest and the prophet of God at the same time. David was the king, and he had a prophetic element to his nature. Although he had the prophet Nathan, who kept him in line. But as a priest and a prophet together, Zechariah has a unique perspective on the people. He understands the worship. He understands sacrifice. He understands the temple. He understands holiness. And he is the one who proclaims the visions that he has to the people. So the book is going to be laid out in a really interesting pattern. We're going to see he's going to go from the current situation with the people. We're going to see these 8 visions that he has. Then he's going to talk about the coming Messiah and then the coming kingdom. So that's why it's going to take a while to get through this, because we're going to take a look at those 8 visions. You know, if we're doing 3 of these a night or 3 of these a week, that's 3 weeks right there. The 8 visions plus the introduction, and then chapter 1. Then we're going to talk about the coming Messiah, and then we're going to talk about the coming kingdom of the Messiah. Zechariah is quoted or referred to 70 times in the New Testament. That's a lot. That's an awful lot. So we want to do our due diligence, and we want to make sure that we cover all the things that we want to here. We're going to take a look at the developing of the name, the branch for the Messiah. We're going to read in Zechariah 11 or 12. I think it might be 12, about the humble king riding on a donkey. That's a reference to Palm Sunday. We're going to see the theme of the Messiah being a shepherd. It's interesting. I'm writing about the 23rd Psalm in my devotions in the morning right now, and that's the whole key to the 23rd Psalm. The 30 pieces of silver, that comes from the book of Zechariah. The pierced one, that comes from Zechariah. The shepherd will be struck, and then the king reigning over all the earth. All of these themes come from the book of Zechariah. So I think that's just about it. I wanted to kind of end on this. So imagine that you're building a building, okay? You're at a construction site, and you're building a building, and what everyone else sees is piles of lumber and stuff like that, but God sees the finished project. It's interesting that we were at our son and daughter-in-law's house yesterday for Father's Day with our grandson, and I have a car that died on me, and my son is a mechanic, and he wanted to take it and see if he could get that thing back running. So he's got the engine apart, and he took me into the garage, and it looked like a auto parts store just sneezed, and everything was everywhere. The engine is down to the blocks. There's pieces there, wires hanging everywhere. And I just looked at it, and I thought, this is just a jumble of pieces that I have no idea how to put together. But he does know. He's not looking at it saying, man, that's just a jumble of pieces. He's going, well, that's the manifold over there. That's the head over there. That's the carburetor. You know, he knows all those pieces, where they go, and most importantly, what they're going to look like when they're done, and how that car is going to work now when he's done. This is what God is doing with the temple. Right now, as Zechariah begins his message, everything is in shambles. There's a foundation laid, but there's Haggai is sending builders out to go get lumber, go get stone, go get this. They're assembling, they're gathering all the parts to assemble. And the people of God are in shambles. The temple is in ruins and in shambles. The people of God are in shambles. The priesthood, everything is a mess. But God sees the final picture. He knows what he's building here. And he's going to use Zechariah to give that vision to the people. And these 8 visions we're going to look like are how God does that. So I want you to, when we approach these 8 visions of Zechariah, by the way, they all came in one night. This isn't like he had a vision, then 2 years later he had another vision. No, this is all in one night. All 8 of these visions, God is revealing the pieces of the puzzle, and then after that, the picture of the Messiah and the kingdom of the Messiah that's what we're shooting for. That's why we're doing all this. So that's what we're gonna have to look forward to next time. So Skip will be here tomorrow night, and then I'll come back on Thursday or Wednesday, and we're going to take a look at chapter 1, verses 1 through 6. And then we're going to start digging through those wonderful visions of Zechariah. So, all right, everybody, that's it for tonight. God bless each and every one of you, and we'll see you next time on Digging Deeper Daily. God bless.